Live streaming is on.
Okay, so we're live now. Thanks everyone for joining, and thanks for listening in to everyone here on the YouTube live stream to the Ask Me Anything session about the new Q2 roadmap for the Eternity Crypto Foundation. We have here three of the core developers of the Eternity blockchain protocol, Fabian Kroll, Sean Hindy. Sorry, how do you pronounce your last name? You're on
You're
mute.
muted.
Yeah, you had it right, exactly.
Hindy, okay.
Hi, everybody.
Hi there. And Dimitar Ivanov, I think long time known face also here. And yeah, we would like to give you, first of all, a short overview of the newest developments that the Eternity Crypto Foundation is tackling now in Q2 2022. And after that, we will have an open session where everyone on the YouTube live stream can ask their technical questions, but also general questions about all the features related to the Eternity blockchain protocol, as well as the newest features like Hyperchains, multisig, or state channels. Like, don't be shy. Please ask all your questions on the live stream. We will save them for you and bring them here to the core developers. So please go ahead, Dimitar.
Okay, let me start sharing the screen. We're here. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so this is what we plan on doing for the next, well, we're in the middle of Q2, so for next month and a half, and what we've been doing for the past month and a half. So we'll be talking about Hyperchains. This is our biggest topic. Basically, we dedicate most of our efforts there. And when we have some spare cycles, or it would be better not to be causing troubles to each other, we do other stuff. And that other stuff, we're going to discuss those along the way. So, Hyperchains. This discussion here presumes that you already know what hyperchains are. So let's briefly go through what we currently have. At this point, we had released Hyperchains Alpha, which is the version 0.1 of Hyperchains. Hyperchains is a combination of two things: the proof of stake protocol and the connection to the parent chain. And the Hyperchains Alpha comes only with the proof of stake, delegated proof of stake part. Moving from proof of work to DPoS was a really big effort, actually. But at this point, we have stakers, we have delegates, so later on we're going to showcase you how this actually works, but we have a consensus smart contract that actually decides, you can implement your own custom protocol if you want to, with your own custom rules in Sophia without any Erlang knowledge, but you probably need some consensus and blockchain knowledge. And this is already present. We have a Hyperchains testnet that is running, and people can interact with it. We plan on restarting that after we have some more stuff to deliver there. So we have the rewards. Currently, Eternity blockchain is using Bitcoin next generation consensus, Bitcoin ING. And the reward split is a bit complex because there are three entities that are receiving the rewards on every block. The current miner, the next miner, and the BRI. And this is so good, but this is now propagated to a certain extent through the smart contract. So if you want some more complex reward distributions, you can implement that in your own personal or enterprise hyperchain. There are no parent-chain connectors yet. Those would have to be. Those are in the process of being implemented at the moment. There is no fork resolution. So if there are two competing forks in the DPoS, there is no untying mechanism. This is going to be derived from the parent chain, as it would be the source of truth who the leader is, and the difficulty of the chain of the two forks essentially are going to get derived from the parent chain anyway. So we didn't waste time implementing a full DPoS. Currently, we have some simple user interface for inspecting different stakers, who's going to be the next leader. You can stake and unstake, and this is done. Oh, Fabian's going to show you. This is done using a fork of the base app. So that's what we currently have. Some parts of that were developed during Q1 and some during Q2. It's a bit difficult to draw the line when what was developed. So let's see some demo. Whoops, no. Now it's Fabian's turn to share. I stop sharing.
So, hi everyone. I will share with you basic view of the demo UI. You can see a bunch of information over there, like who is the current leader, who is the provisioned next leader, who are the validators. The naming in the UI need to be fixed to name it stakers, based on the discussion we had about the naming, our naming conventions. So we can see a history, how the stake changed and what's the balance. You can see all the delegates, all the people that staked. You can see the key block distribution, so which staker was a leader, was signing blocks. And you can see the top 25 blocks to see how it looks. On the staking part, we recently deployed ability to stake and unstake via demo UI. So first of all, you should check the base app. This is our fork of the official base app that supports Hyperchains. You should check if the network is properly set to testnet HC aeternity IO. You can also use a faucet to top up your account and play with the demo. Let's try it. Okay, so now my balance is 41 and something tokens. When I connect to the app, the same balance should be presented on the page. You can choose your validator that you want to stake to. Let's take, the minimal amount is 10 tokens. So let's make 11. You need to, of course, confirm like a standard base app process for that. And you can also unstake. So the change should be visible in a few seconds. So let's wait a bit to see. Now we can see that I have more shares than previously. So let's now unstake and see how that unstaking works. Now you can see my balance increased a lot. And in the near future, I will update the UI to have more information on the page. So if there's anything you would like to see or any feature that it might be useful for us, please let us know.
Small comment here. So basically how this works is we have staker pools, and each staker pool gets so you supporting a staker, you join his or her staker pool, right? And let me start the camera. So when does this happens, you essentially buy shares in that staking pool. So there is a constant ratio that is being maintained of Eternity coins locked into this staker pool and Eternity coins that are can be distributed. So every time someone joins staker pool, the total amount of AE in the staker pool increases. And every time there is a reward received by this staker, the reward goes to the staker pool instead. And then if I have 10% of all shares, I receive 10% of the reward in that staking contract. So that's why when Fabian withdrew like 5% of the shares, he received 3,000 AE because he had accumulated a lot of staking rewards there. And this is going to get visualized, as he said, this is going to get visualized soon, so users can see how putting 30 tokens in a smart contract can result in their stake growing over time, or rather receiving rewards for supporting a staker. Yeah, I think I can share my screen again, I guess.
Sure.
Okay. So what we're going to do now, we're in the process of developing Eternity to Eternity parent chain connector, and once this is done, we will start working on Eternity to Bitcoin parent chain connector. We want to get firmer grasp on what is needed in the different cases and to build a unified parent chain agnostic API. Every time there is a new block on the parent chain, on the child chain, stakers are producing commitments, and currently this is not implemented yet. So this is on our plate. We have to improve the smart contract, and some notable changes that we should add is like names, so we can differentiate different stakers, or we can put some short description. The other notable changes are currently there is a limit, minimum limit to become a leader, to become a staker. So anyone can become a staker. But then the staker can withdraw their tokens. So we should put some more limits and checks and bells and whistles here and there. Once we have commitments on the parent chain, we can do the fork resolution. So if there are two competing forks, we can determine which one is the right one. We need some heavy testing of all of this and improve the UI. Currently, our deployment is a bit ad hoc because at this point, it's really mostly research and development, and we don't know what we're going to need in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. For example, we didn't know we needed base app wallet fork a few weeks ago. So our development is really a moving target, and our deployment process is has to catch up a bit. So when we're not working on Hyperchains, we're improving things under the hood. We have a really ongoing database refactoring, which is going to provide us with some stability improvements, and it's going to allow us to do some tasks more efficiently. I don't want to promise when this is going to get delivered because our biggest priority is Hyperchains anyway. Once this is done, we'll be working on garbage collection of old states. Currently, we have garbage collection, but it's a slow and computationally heavy process. And we're garbage collecting only the accounts. The goal is to improve that significantly and to start garbage collecting names, contracts, oracles, and channels that are closed, of course. Now we move to Canary. There's some notable changes that Fabian is going to talk about.
So there are two main things that we want to focus this quarter on in the Canary application. So first one is tainted account. So we want to have ability to track token movements between accounts and get notified if certain accounts got funded or withdraw some tokens. And the second one is big refactoring. We want to make sure this project is easy to use and to develop for people from the community. So everyone that want to hop in and do something with Eternity and want to play with Elixir can do it.
Okay, and the next thing we want to brag about is the multisig tooling. Currently, as we've shown, I think during October, we have already support for multisig, and what we lack is tooling to produce those signatures. At this point, we have a tool that actually can showcase this, and but it needs some deeper Erlang knowledge if you want to implement that in TypeScript or JavaScript or something. So once Hans has some spare time, he's going to improve the tool a bit, clean it up, and write a proper documentation how and what is needed for this to be implemented in another language. The thing is that the algorithm is language agnostic, so anyone can implement it in language they like. So hopefully this is going to allow people to include it in other wallets. So that's our short presentation. I stop sharing and we're ready for questions, I guess.
So there was one comment from Jivanjot on another channel that he was saying, I think regarding the Hyperchains, probably the demo, said like 5 to 3,000 plus seems like starting with very open ROI on testnet.
So yes, and this is just a testnet, and we're going to reset it soon. The thing is that we initially started with really small amounts for stakers, 1,000 testnet coins each. So adding 30 coins is essentially 3% of the our staking power, and that's why, having in mind that this account had been running for quite a while, Fabian's, that's why he withdrew so much coins after unstaking.
Yeah, so basically I staked right after the deployment, so that was the reason for that.
But every day, a lot of... So the goal of Hyperchains long term is to provide anyone to spawn as many chains they want. And even if those are small chains, you can still be keeping the same security of the parent chain, essentially. So if the parent chain is Eternity, you can have the same security as the Eternity chain, and if you attach that to Bitcoin, you're going to be having the same security as Bitcoin. And this is an economic problem, and I'm not going to dive into details, but we haven't changed the inflation curve currently. So for the hyperchains, there are really big rewards initially. So the initial stakers are going to get really big rewards, and this is going to get down and down and down with time, and it's going to get less return of investment eventually. But by this point, if the hyperchain is worth its money, you wouldn't need that anyway. So if, because this is your own chain, solving your own problem, you can tweak the inflation curve as you see fit. So you can have bigger rewards, rewards for longer, smaller rewards, no rewards. It's all up to your particular case. So having said that, we haven't tackled the economics of it at all.
Okay. I have a question there. So for the Eternity mainnet itself, I guess it will also be like a first use case of hyperchains, right? Like it will also be directly, let's say, linked to the Bitcoin blockchain. And what would happen like with the traditional chain? Like would it still continue with proof of work mining, or would that be completely stopped? How would how would the state change like with the existing mainnet?
Well, this is a political decision, and I'm solving technical problems. So what I'm about to say is my personal opinion. It's
Okay.
not about the core dev team or Eternity or the foundation or whatever. It's my personal opinion. Is that once we have answered to all technical and economic questions, there should be a vote, and the community shall decide. And we're not there yet. We still have a lot of open questions, both technical and economic ones. So I think it's really too early for this to happen.
Okay. Yeah, would just be curious, like if it would just change to be only proof of stake, like what would happen with the traditional miners. But yeah, we're not there yet to decide this.
So I would add my personal opinion to that as well, which is that regardless of whether the community votes to turn the Eternity mainnet into a hyperchain or not, the hyperchain technology we're building is super useful to use as a child chain in its own right. So there can be applications where, for example, you want a child chain that stores lots of data on chain, but it's uneconomic to keep it in the main network. So you could spawn a hyperchain and use that as your sidechain. So the technology that we're building as technologists has a lot of use cases. And only one of these use cases may, in the future, depending on the community, become the replacement for the Eternity mainnet. So it'll be really interesting to me to see all of the uses people find to make of hyperchains, because it's pretty cool tech, and as I say, lots of potential interesting uses, both as with Eternity network as a parent and also other networks as parent chains. So yeah, that's my take on it. I think it's useful tech, and it's independent really of the final decision on Eternity mainnet.
But also there will be, it relies on proof work still. It's a proof of stake algorithm with a proof work component, but there still would be that proof of work, and somebody has to do that. So even if Eternity mainnet moves to a hyperchain, someone down the line, there will be still a need for miners that would be mining, but it would be mining for some other chain. That's the thing. I really think my personal opinion would be that miners would continue mining, and there would be simply two chains, two Eternity chains. there will be a fork. But I don't know. I don't have my crystal ball here, so I cannot know.
Right.
Yeah, I was just asking this because I think it's a question that interests like many people in our community, like how the hyperchains will actually be applied in the actual eternity mania. But yeah, I understand that it's a political decision, and I guess the best thing will also if we involve the community here and try to find like a solution that is best for all stakeholders.
But before that, we will have much before that. We're going to have eternity to eternity chain, so you can start your own hyperchain and attach it to eternity, and then you're going to be deriving your security from the eternity chain. And I think that's mostly how we're going to test this in real life scenarios where we try to break it. And after some time trying to break it and fixing bugs, then we can discuss how we can move forward.
So we already have some questions from the YouTube chat. The first one, I'm not sure if I particularly understood the question, but says multi-sig support exists. An exciting part is that it exists from native chains address creation mechanism to the smart contract as well. So 2 ways to perform multi-sig. Not sure if this is actually a question, but yeah.
Yeah, well, the difficult thing about multi-sigs is that, well, you have to produce them. So everyone should sign the same thing. And it's a process. It's not simply signing, but rather wallets shall be, I don't know how to say it, synced with each other. So they both, or all of them agree that they're saying the same thing. And yes, you could probably produce multi-sigs with a smart contract, but I'll leave that to Hans if it is possible. I really don't know.
Then we have another question also from the chat. When will hyperchains be commercialized? Which is obviously not a technical question, but yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I guess once they're ready. I don't know. It's really a moving target. Slowly, I'm starting to think that there is not one size fits all solution, hyperchain solution. So there will be different hyperchains and different approaches being taken. We've discussed a bit about commitments on the parent chain, but commitments could also be done on the child chain. And this is going to make the hyperchain much cheaper to, or at least some commitments could be done on the child chain. And this is going to make the hyperchain much cheaper to operate. So basically, every once in a while there will be a commitment, and so I don't know. It's still a moving target, and we'll keep in touch when it's ready. And after that, it's going to get commercialized.
Right. So do you think, for example, hyperchains could be used like in sort of enterprise scenario, like instead of private blockchain or something like that?
Yes, for example, Eternity Crypto Foundation. It's an open source project, especially the core team were developing copper zones and where everything is open and transparent. And for example, if someone takes that time, we can have a couple of smart contracts that define tickets, job, GitHub issues or something. And when someone starts working on a task, they can mark it as, hey, I'm working on this now. And we can put time or whatever, time expected in days or in hours or whatever. So we can put priority. So essentially, you can have project management on the blockchain that is open for everyone to sync, everyone to validate, and everyone can see what we're doing.
Yeah,
So-
that could probably be also interesting for like freelancer application or like a platform, and you can like essentially track and everything's transparent, like regarding timelines, payouts. Like it could probably, like, I still don't understand like where exactly the hyperchain is needed for this, because I think this could also be done just with multisig actually.
Well,
Yeah.
yes, but I'm not sure how you're going to do that with multisig, but then you're going to be polluting the whole blockchain, the whole ledger with something that might not be worth it being kept on a blockchain. But commitments that make the blockchain safe are a really good fit for that. So we can have really, as Sean said, data-intensive blockchains that require
Right.
gigabytes and gigabytes. And if you have a private chain, you can have that. But if you have a private chain, suddenly you're in total control of everything, and it becomes a bit stressful, right?
Right. Right.
And hyperchains empower people to do much more, and keeping it transparent.
So you could essentially use it also as an alternative to IPFS.
Yes, if you gather enough people, yes, why not? It would still be, well, suboptimal, because the current design does not support. It's not intended to support a lot of big chunks of data.
Right.
But probably you could use it for that as well. I think it's going to need some adjustments though.
So I do see enterprise applications for this, to answer your question sort of more directly. I think, you know, if an enterprise has a need for a blockchain for regulatory reasons, they need to show a regulator that a whole bunch of records were associated with a trade or whatever the thing is, then a hyperchain could be an excellent way for an enterprise to have a essentially private blockchain, but which is trustworthy because it's parented on a public chain. So I think you know, there's a lot of audit requirements in business, and I think a hyperchain could be a fantastic solution for that kind of use case. So I'm quite excited by the enterprise potential use cases for this, possibly because that's a bit more my background is coming from enterprise. But I see a lot of use for this. I think it has a lot of potential in a way, you know, that provides us you know, essentially out of the box solution for an enterprise to have a safe and secure and auditable blockchain for their internal stuff. I think it's really well suited for that. So yeah, for sure enterprise. Yeah.
And maybe that also goes into another direction, like that I was curious about also for a longer time. For enterprise application, I think state channels could also be interesting because they offer, let's say, this privacy aspect. Like, because not everything is just stored directly on the public ledger. And yeah, maybe, I don't know how hyperchains and state channels will actually interact, or is it planned to have like any sort of integration, or is like completely independent from each other?
I think you're muted, Dimitar.
I think they're complementary. For example, state channels are not really intended to be private, but rather to be fast. You get some privacy, but there is no guarantee that the other party is going to keep your stuff private. They can still leak your data if they want. So the privacy is limited, and it's a side effect. What you really gain is really fast interaction. Depending the speed you can have a transaction doesn't depend on the current throughput of the network. Doesn't depend if there is a high load. It simply depends if your internet connection is fast enough and how fast you can send transaction. So with that in mind, I think they're complementary and they have different use cases. Of course, you can have state channels inside a hyperchain. So it gets even deeper then. But I think they're solving different problems. For example, the hyperchain solves the issue, let's say, let's think of an example then. Let's say we have Netflix-like service where I buy Netflix tokens. That's the hyperchain. And there are a lot of movies and they're all presented on they're not uploaded the whole movies, but rather some metadata about them. And when I buy Netflix coins, I am allowed to open a state channel with Netflix. I can sell my Netflix coins to Alice, to Bob, to whoever. It doesn't have to be to Netflix, essentially. So the coins are in circulation, and whenever I want to watch a movie, I open a state channel with the Netflix service provider and I pay them in their own coins. And while I'm paying for every, I don't know, 5 seconds, 1 second, it doesn't really matter, I'm paying only for what I'm watching. So you get video on demand and you can top up your account by buying Netflix coins, but then you can also sell your Netflix coins, not just to Netflix, but to anyone, really. And if there are third-party providers that want to provide some other service on the Netflix platform, they can pay it with Netflix coins as well. And they can write smart contracts for that and everything. So you get a private blockchain that is you get a custom fit blockchain that is not private really. It's public and anyone can participate. And since it is still proof of stake, if you stake and support the network with your coins, you're going to increase the security of the network, and you're going to get interest from that. So it's complex.
Sounds very interesting. And it's also touching one point that I was always curious about with blockchain is like intellectual property. And in general, that's like a major issue, let's say, in the open form of the internet that we have right now. And obviously, I also love the free way of the internet. But for many content creators, it's it's difficult to make a living, let's say, from this pay-per-view or this kind of business, because there's lots of piracy going on, and like many services that allow to share like peer-to-peer. Do you see there also like a possible application, or I guess it doesn't make sense because like in the end, even if it's all encrypted, like if one person pays, they could still locally store it and then like share it for free again, right?
I haven't investigated this in detail. But yeah, I think if anything touches my computer, that's mine now, and I can do anything with it.
Yeah.
So it's complicated. That's why I like the approach with video on demand, that you pay for every second of video.
Right.
But then, if I don't like the whole video, I'm not going to pay that guy or girl for the rest of the video, and I'm simply going to close it, right?
Yeah, and in the end, also many people go to Netflix because of convenience, like because you can have like all the languages, all the subtitles. You have always like a stream of new things you can watch. You don't have to like look for yourself. So in the end, let's say the business model is not so much on let's say the individual content, but about how you market it and how you deliver it in the end.
Yes, but if you have a hyperchain that is I don't know, Netflix again. You can have third-party providers preparing subtitles in different languages, and if there is enough demand for a language, there could be a business case that someone is going to be producing subtitles for that language. So it can get more decentralized, the whole thing. So, for example, I'm Bulgarian. There are no subtitles in Netflix in Bulgarian.
Oh,
Yeah, it's quite unfortunate, especially for my mother. But if there is demand for that, people could integrate third-party services into the Netflix blockchain.
okay, interesting.
And what is more, currently it's hard to convince miners to mine for your chain. And if we have a lot of different chains, smaller ones or big enterprise ones, the security of the chain is going to depend solely on the whim of the miners. And if we want to build a decentralized future, we want to have as many chains as possible, right? And there simply isn't enough mining power to cover everything. This means that most of the chains are going to be left with a low security. That's why we need hyperchains, because if we have one big chain that has a lot of security, all other chains can derive their security from it.
Yeah. And just to touch another point also that I've seen in the roadmap, I think, not sure if we discussed it already, there was some mention of advanced state channels that improve the client-side experience. Did you touch this before?
I don't think we're going to have time with that. Or rather, we already did. We did a small improvement that we had been talking for quite some time now, which is going to allow, if someone wants to build such service, to broadcast messages. So, imagine, there's this thing called virtual state channels, and we are not developing that. They're complex and they're going to take us really a lot of time to get right. Virtual state channels are going to allow you to open a state channel inside the state channel. So if you have Alice and Caro and they don't have state channels between themselves, a virtual state channel is going to allow them to, if they have a state channel with Bob, so there is Alice Bob and Bob Caro, then a virtual state channel can be opened through Bob without touching the mainnet anyway. So Alice is going to open a state channel with Caro in her Alice Bob state channel, and Caro is going to open state channel with Alice in her Caro Bob state channel, and then they open a direct connection between themselves, and Bob is not reading everything they send to each other, which would allow them to send big piece of data and so on. And it's more private than all data passing through Bob. What we implemented is a small flag. Currently, state channels support sending metadata, like random messages that are meaningful for the sender and for the receiver and are not part of the smart contract consensus, but rather allow people to build their own protocols. State channel consensus, sorry. Allow them to build their own protocol. So if you have a game and the game involves some images to be shown or hidden or whatever, you can do that as generic messages. And what we implemented is added a flag that says if I receive a message from Alice and she says she wants this to go to Caro without having a virtual state channel, that this message shall be transmitted from, if I have a state channel with Caro, that is, that I shall send this message to Caro if I want to. And this is a bit poor man's virtual state channels, and it's just a convenience thing. I see 2 more questions.
Yeah. So the first question, or not sure if it's a question as well, it says, well, first miners will do stakings, based on ROI, on return on investment provided by each chain. There comes next good tools, yield farming for children chains.
I don't understand that.
Yeah, me neither. Maybe I think Sims too. Can you try to rephrase that if it was a question? And then the other question was inflation might be high for most of the chains in the start and go low to adjust for later. I think if above thing follow. So it was, I think, regarding what you said in the beginning for the inflation curve for validators.
Yeah, but this is fully adjustable. The thing is that this is your own chain that solves a particular use case. And if you want to have a standard inflation, constant inflation, or I don't know, increasing inflation, I really don't know. You can have that. So far, especially in the context of proof work blockchains, the inflation going to zero after 100 years had worked great for the first 10 years, right? And so it really depends on your use case.
Yeah. So could you say, like, from the total time amount, like after which percent, like let's say, will it already start to go down, or is it like immediately from day one?
On alternative blockchain?
No. I'm saying like in general, like I mean the inflation curve. I guess it's like completely customized, right? Like there's no fixed way to like in Hyperchains.
Yes, it's customizable. Every Hyperchain can have their own inflation curve.
Okay, cool.
That's the goal. The goal is to have Hyperchains customizable as much as possible. So if you want to have bigger blocks, smaller blocks, more blocks, I don't know, faster blocks or something, and if most of those decisions come with some trade-off, like if you want to have bigger blocks and more transactions, everything, you have to store those transactions, right? So your blockchain is going to get bigger faster, and this is going to interact with your network as well. It's going to impact it. So it's not it makes it type of solution, but rather every decision brings some problems with it. And if you're willing to deal with the problems, and they even might not be problems in your particular use case, then why not? The idea is to have it as customizable as possible, so you can adjust it to your particular use case.
So I just asked the community member to rephrase the question before. So they wrote this. They say, let's say there are children chains, each chain with their own mining reward. Most people follow higher mining rewards. There will become miner of chains that provides bigger rewards. There will then be tools available to handle investments for miners, which means most chains will follow inflation patterns from high to low. What do you think about it?
I'm not good at economics, so I don't know. It sounds really reasonable, and there might be some consolidation down the line, but I don't know. I really want to believe in the decentralized future. So I don't know.
Then there was a follow-up question. There was Dash with master nodes where the rewards was high first to sell the nodes but went lower. Would you guys be bidding slots of hyperchains?
The goal is to have the hyperchain. Okay, so first of all, if you want to have swotted approach, you can implement that in your Hyperchain smart contract. So if your use case demands that, go ahead. It's Sophia smart contract language. You can implement it this way. On the other hand, we currently are not planning to do that. We're planning to have it as open and decentralized, so anyone can become a staking validator. But if your use case is that, please go ahead. It's not that difficult to write Sophia. And with regards to the follow-up question, there is no limit of hyperchains. You can have as many hyperchains as you want, and anyone can spawn their own hyperchain. The thing is that you have to pick a parent chain, and you have to be paying fees on that parent chain. And if the fees go high, maybe you have to switch to another parent chain. Currently, the let's switch to another chain part is not implemented as we don't have parent chains at this point. But the goal is to have hyperchains inside hyperchains, and people would be moving their hyperchains from one parent to another if they see fit. And if one parent chain becomes too expensive, you could move to another.
Interesting.
So the goal is to have this as distributed and decentralized as possible, and to give the power to actual users to decide what they want to do with that.
So essentially, there could be like also some tool, I guess, like to automatically switch from one parent chain to another, like based on the economics.
I think this should be subject to a vote inside. Well, it depends. It depends on the particular chain. So if it is a really big chain that is really decentralized and everything, I think there should be a vote there. And if it is my own personal, well, if it's my own personal chain, I probably have all the staking power, so I can simply decide moving it. But I don't imagine that to be a simple step.
Yeah. Yeah, just thinking out loud,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
maybe it would be cool to be able to change like automatically during the day based on, I don't know, changing gas fees or things like that.
Yes, but still, if you want to, so picking parent chains should be done really careful. Further down the line, let's say in 10 years, you want to be anyone to be syncing your hyperchain, right? So they can see that you haven't changed anything. And if the parent chain is suddenly gone and there is no support for it, and then it will be impossible for anyone to simply download the parent chain and validate that those commitments on the parent chain were indeed there. So it's a bit more complex, I'm afraid. So you should be picking stable chains and not just picking the cheapest one out there.
So one comment again from the chat is chains will lock funds for some time to secure themselves. The most common method I would apply to my chain.
Yes, currently it's not, it brings a lot of security for the network. And what is more is if you lock your coins in the smart contract, you can have really a lot of stakers that are locked, and they all have their own shares. It's just the pie they have shares of grows along with time, with the rewards being received. So you still have your share, but suddenly the pie is bigger. And if you want to withdraw your tokens, you withdraw depending on the share you have, on the slice you have of the pie. So I really like the approach of locking tokens. The problem with that is you cannot use them while doing so. But at least the reward distribution is much easier to implement. So if you want to implement efficient reward distribution for millions of stakers, go ahead. It's really difficult. So I would rather stick with the locking of tokens.
Yeah. That brings me to another question I've seen like plenty of times in the community also before, whether hyperchains can be used also for syncing, let's say, the parent and child chain, not just for security reasons, but also for development. But from my superficial understanding, I guess it's not possible. But yeah, it would be cool to also hear your opinion on that.
Can you please elaborate? What development?
Yeah, like in the sense that there was one proposal, for example, to use hyperchains to sync Sophia spot contracts to Solidity contracts or something like that, if the parent chain would be Ethereum.
I don't know how you're going to do that.
Yeah, I also feel it's kind of utopian, like to apply like one thing to just do something completely different with it. Like you first of all need to apply like one concept, which is the security in itself, like bringing security to like all of the chains that don't have as many like hash rate and miners and so forth, by having like a more secure parent chain. And yeah, combining different virtual machines and things like that, I think that's something totally different, right?
Well, the thing with the virtual machine is Sophia is using the Fate virtual machine at the moment,
Yeah.
and it's great. And I don't want to get into details how much greater it is than Solidity, but it allows you to do some things that are first-class citizens in Sophia, like names or oracles and stuff, and those are all type safe, and those are not allowed. Are not part of the Ethereum world. So if you want to switch to a different virtual machine, you could probably do that. But then you wouldn't be able to use any of the other nice things Eternity has to offer.
Yeah, yeah. I guess this was mostly like an idea, like also for adoption, you know, like to bring in existing, I don't know, DeFi platforms and everything that's already built on Ethereum, make it easier for them to just deploy directly via hyperchains or something like that. But yeah, I think it's a totally different use case.
Yeah. I guess you can spawn a hyperchain with a different virtual machine altogether.
Oh, you can, okay.
I guess you can. The code base is not ready for that, and it's not something we plan, but it's an open source project. You can fork it and do that.
Interesting. And then another different question also. Oh wait, there's I think one more question. No, never mind. Regarding the Rosetta Api integration, I think that was like a major thing also to be able to list with Coinbase. Do you know if there's this going to be tackled this quarter?
Yeah, I can say something on that.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a background work going on Rosetta. Some parts of it are done. Some parts of it we have a guy working part-time who is working through, and there are other parts of the Rosetta API that it turns out are in some ways not very easy to implement with the Eternity chain. For example, in Rosetta, you need to record all of the balance changes that happen in every transaction. and that's not something that exists today in the Eternity chain. So some of the transaction types in Eternity, of the 20 or so, we record all of that data. Some we do not. So I would say that Rosetta work is ongoing. It's a background task. It's not as high priority as Hyperchains. And there are some aspects of it to do a full Rosetta implementation, which require a fair amount of work. So I guess my summary from all that is to say, yes, we're working on it. We don't really know exactly how long it's going to take. But it is indeed the plan to have Rosetta support in the coming times. Yeah, sorry if it's not a very concrete answer, but it is simply the reality. The Rosetta API was really designed around Bitcoin
Right.
and Ethereum, and they both record all of the things. The Eternity chain is a little different because we have so many